Yeah.
Where somebody sent me a video about Goya beans, and I'm like, it's this dude that sends me funny stuff all the time. Conservative, way right, I guess you would say, sends me all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, why are you sending me something about Goya beans? So what is that about?
You gotta be fucking nice, especially this day and age, man. Everybody getting in trouble. All these goddamn groups out there, bitch moaning and complaining. Anytime anybody says anything, hey, we're kind of a group. You gotta apologize. I'm sorry to people who own Sharpies. I didn't mean to say that it's an ugly ass dog.
Welcome to the Gray Matters podcast.
We were talking before, it's something I've been seeing a lot of comedians talk about, and that's like the whole cancel culture thing. And I know, Mitch, you were kind of curious of what that was until I kind of explained it.
Yeah.
But
I think Mitch is one of the best people to talk to about this because he just doesn't follow any kind of like normal mainstream media nonsense at all. So he was like, what's cancel culture? And it's really funny to me to watch it happen, because sometimes it makes sense. Like R. Kelly, the artist,
I want to pee on you.
right? Yeah, the big so, like the
On you.
survivors released this documentary called Surviving R. Kelly, and talking about like pedophilia, rape allegations, abuse, this and that, and he like denies everything, but people are like, we're done with R. Kelly, like he's done. And like in today's society with social media, I feel like that happens rightfully so, like in that instance.
Like people quit paying attention to them because they're an asshole, and other people call them out.
Right.
Yeah.
But then in other times, it happens when it doesn't make as much sense. If that, like, so, like, the whole thing with Goya.
Goya beans.
Yeah.
Where somebody sent me a video about Goya beans, and I'm like, it's this dude that sends me funny stuff all the time. Super redneck, conservative, way right, I guess you would say, sends me all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, why are you sending me something about Goya beans? So what is that about?
Yeah, so essentially the White House had the CEO there to, I can't remember specifically what they were doing, I was just reading about it, but essentially the CEO was like, we're all really lucky to have someone like President Trump as our leader. He reminds me a lot of my grandfather. He's a builder, because Goya is like, it's symbolic of the American dream, right? It's these Hispanic or Latin American family that like comes to this country as an immigrant and then like builds this empire. Like Goya's huge and provides, like, I like Goya products, and I'm not a fan of President Trump, but I'm not gonna stop using their seasoning because they like President Trump. But like now the like extreme left, like Trump haters, like they're like, Goya is canceled.
Oh my God.
But wasn't it also like Trump and then like Ivanka or someone, or his daughter, like is his daughter Ivanka, or that's his wife? Whoever it is. It was like him and someone else did like a social media post, and his was from the White House endorsing a product, which is not like legal or allowed or whatever the correct word is.
What now? At the
Trump.
parties?
No, he was like sitting at
He
his desk
tweeted
in
like
the
a
Oval
photo
Office.
of Goya beans in front of him. Was like,
with
I
like
love
a bunch
Goya
of
or
Goya
something.
products.
I can pull
with
it
like
up, but
thumbs
yeah.
up. It's
Well,
ridiculous.
if you had somebody, a CEO from a company, come to your office, and like, so if I had when I was in printing, if I had HBO come to my office, I was like, HBO, like what's wrong with him doing that?
Well, he's the president of the United States promoting a brand.
I think if he was just like in his personal quarters or whatever, like it would be a little, the fact that he was like in his Oval Office,
fact that,
like presidential seals everywhere, like
or that American tax dollars pay him what, $450,000 a year to be president?
He doesn't take his salary.
Oh, he doesn't take his salary?
He just takes a bunch of golf trips.
But he also
like
says a bunch of other
really
bullshit that he lies about. So, but anyways, I think the president of the United States should stay pretty neutral with businesses, because
I agree with that.
He's promoting to his millions of followers on social media alone, not to mention all the press that photo got, just like everything he does or says.
Yeah.
how many millions and millions of people around the world are going to be
He did free
biasly
advertising,
swayed
yeah,
to
for
this
them.
brand over
Or
the other
turned off.
brands? Or either way, he's a president of a country. He has influence. Like, he is the ultimate influencer on
Right.
social media.
Yeah.
Like, whether people like him or not, he is. Like, he has a shit ton of Twitter
People
followers.
pay attention
like,
to what he does. Yeah.
he's the president of the United States, and like his information, his words go global.
Do you think it's actually him tweeting all the
I
time?
wonder that all the time, but
Because there's some stupid shit.
But
I
there's
think that those are the ones that are him. And then the ones that are like well thought out are like his team. That's
Yeah,
like, this
I
is
agree
what
with
we're
that.
gonna post today.
yeah, he's like, I can give it back. They're like,
Yeah.
no, sin.
Yeah, because like he's posting shit on Twitter at like 3 a.m.
But he's
you can schedule
he
Twitter
doesn't
posts
sleep.
though. You can schedule.
No, I'm
all-
saying like, but like he posts some like nonsense.
But he doesn't sleep.
at,
He's
like, 3
notorious
a.m.
for sleeping like a couple of hours a night.
Right. Yeah. So
I'm
I
not
mean,
notorious.
a bunch of,
Man.
but doesn't necessarily mean Goya deserves to be blacklisted as a company.
No.
Because
Well, before
they
we get into that,
support
can
President
you
Trump.
explain from your perspective of what cancel
Cancel Not
culture means to you, and just like your overall take on it?
I think
Because people listening may not have ever heard of that, or may not understand it, or there's,
Like-
but this is our perspective,
like
of
me.
course. But like, because I think that'd be interesting. You start, and then we could
Grill
shit-
Mitch.
Yeah,
I think it's
we'll
definitely
get the lights, bend you back over in your chair. Like,
Let me get my eye pillow.
it's gonna sound oversimplified no matter which way I spin it, because like I said before, I think there's real and valid reasons for people to be canceled. Like, or if you want to follow that reason, like famous people shouldn't be able to get away with everything.
Well, before
because
all that,
they're
just what
famous.
is your interpretation of like?
I
the
just
word
wanted to
cancel
put
culture?
that disclaimer, because there's certain moments where you need to step back and do a little bit more research and find out like what's true and what's not, and why this person is
That's
getting
what we'll get
blasted
into, because I want to talk about
and-
Chris D'Elia or D'Elia.
Yeah,
How you-
D'Elia.
yeah.
So cancel culture is when somebody does something that gets blasted or publicized, and it's not always 100% factual. So it could be something that somebody else said that they did, or it can be something that a person or company did specifically, like for sure
a
that
good
person
example
did
of this
that.
is going to be the recent CrossFit thing where they
Yes.
made negative
yeah.
comments
The
about.
CEO said some wildly inappropriate things.
And so, like, I've got a couple friends that own CrossFit gyms, and they're like having deep conversations inside of their community, saying like, "Are we going to move forward with these guys or not?"
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are backing out because of his word, what he said.
Right. That's a great example. So somebody, whether it's a group or an individual, says or does something, and then they're put on blast on the internet, and then it's almost like a mob mentality to get it canceled or revoked. So there are certain things where it's just like everybody needs to unfollow this person, like they don't deserve to be in the limelight anymore, or it's like we're not going to buy their products anymore, or we're not going to be associated or affiliated with them anymore.
Yeah.
And people are just like dropping them left and right. And I think it's super powerful with the age of social media, because if somebody's shitty and they're getting called out for it, and people are able to look at this thing that they're doing and go, I don't want to be affiliated with this company anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important, but I think that there's also, like I said, like a mob mentality behind it, where people are jumping down other people's throats
Yeah, that's the culture right now. That people just want to
before.
react.
Yeah. Well, you don't. Yeah. There's just reaction. There's no like.
That's because the
Let's
level of
wait a
emotional
minute.
intelligence is so low. Like, the more that we begin to dive into that topic within our own beings and try to be more empathetic and understanding of other people and ourselves and our relationships and strangers, the more it makes sense. But like, that's just what when people talk about like social media is so evil, like no, it's your perspective and how you use it. Like a tool, like a screwdriver, could either kill someone or could solve your mechanical problems that you're looking for a solution.
Right.
But people make up their own things based on their own perceptions, and that becomes their reality, that becomes their truth, and then that's how they react to everything in their life. And it's like, well, sharing about the beginning of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about your paradigms and your belief systems and like the structure and the value system that you've been conditioned one way or another and that you hold, and it just gets tighter and tighter, or like your grip around it gets tighter and tighter. And then when people do things that you don't quite agree with on a core level, whether it's correct or not, like whether we would all agree on it or not, like that's your truth, then you're like, oh, that offends me, or oh, I don't agree with it, and you act emotionally rather than stopping to think, which is, I feel like, the 5th habit in that book. He talks like, first seek to understand, then be understood. But right now, so many people are acting off of pure emotion without understanding either the context, perspective of where that person's coming from that said something that triggered them, and they're just reacting.
Yeah, I mean, you even see like influencers, if you will, putting a post up about a certain product or something they don't like, and you look in the comments and everybody's just like, boom, 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 negative.
They're like, fuck these guys.
And they don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So here's something, it's a quick clip from one of Bill Burr's 2014 Stand With the Black and White special, and this is what I think is really happening.
To people who own Sharpies, I didn't mean to say that it's an ugly ass dog. You know what? Fuck you and your group. What about that? Who the fuck joins a group? I'm gonna join a group. That's what I'm gonna do today. Go to meetings. Kind of a fucking loser, right? Fucking stupid ass groups. People apologizing to them like they have some sort of power. Look, if you're being a dick, apologize. But other than that, yeah, go fuck yourself.
And he was talking, there's like more before and after, but he's talking about that. He's like, so-and-so said something and everyone freaked out because some part of the population didn't agree with it, and oh, that offends me, and like that's where we are. But also what you and I've talked about before, like we weren't given trophies for just trying. Like that's not competition. You don't get rewarded for putting effort in. You get maybe acknowledged that like, hey, you tried, cool, but like you're not gonna get a trophy unless you get first, second, or third. Like in competition, like when I was competing in BMX, it was like anyone that didn't make top 24 didn't get to the finals. Anyone that, or to the actual contest, anyone that didn't make top 12 didn't get to the finals. And if you didn't get past this threshold, you didn't get paid X amount of dollars. Like it wasn't like everyone was treated equal, but like that's what I believe the current culture in terms of what we live in today, especially the younger generation, it's just like they're just fed all this shit to be like praised, but also distracted. They get instant gratification. And they're soft. Like and that's what I think he's referencing there.
Yeah, I do think though it's really cool, because if you're a racist person, if you're a sexist person, if you're a homophobic person, and it's 2020, and you are somehow providing like a service to people that like mass consumers, or like Chick-fil-A, for example, incredibly homophobic company.
Yes.
So bad. Even though we don't eat fast food, I will never spend $1 at Chick-fil-A. Like I just if you spend money at Chick-fil-A, you're ignoring, like literally they fund programs to deregulate LGBTQ.
I know.
Oh, yeah. What was the thing a couple years
thing.
ago where, was it gay marriage, when like Chick-fil-A was in the spotlight for standing up and saying like this is bullshit or something like that? It was something to do, because me and a buddy were gonna go like have a smooch in front of Chick-fil-A.
Let's go make out in front of Chick-fil-A just to piss them off. And like what's crazy is that a lot of the employees that work at Chick-fil-A probably couldn't care less, but the company as a head. So that's where cancel culture is really cool, because now, because of social media, people are aware that their organizers and owners hold these truths, and you can not attend their business because you know that what they believe in is fundamentally like just kind of crooked. It's terrible. Like it's limiting. And that's where it gets kind of confusing with the Goya thing, because I like supporting President Trump is wild to me. Like, he's defunding environmental protection.
That drives me crazy.
Like, they are like the vice president believes in conversion camps.
What is
like
that?
where you send gay children to camps to try and make them straight.
Oh my god.
Like the belief systems are wild. So by backing that president, I don't think you necessarily care about
Biden
groups
thinks
that are being
or
marginalized.
Pence
No,
thinks that?
Pence thinks so.
Yeah, no, and he doesn't like weed either, so I'm out.
Like, that's where I'm drawing the line.
That's all I listen to. I'm
Yeah.
like, did he say he's gonna legalize pot? All right, he's gone.
No, he's done. Canceled.
Canceled. Not got my vote.
I want to dive into why it is that people are against Goya, but first, you said something that's really powerful, is that because of social media, we can expose people, basically. Like, we can either expose them positively or negatively. Like, so-and-so did this, like George Floyd, for example, that situation. That 20, 30 years, I mean, what, 15? No, it's been, yeah, I guess it's been 11 years since I got my first iPhone. iPhones came out, what, 2005, 6?
Yeah.
So, like, 2009 when I got mine. But, like, yeah, it's like 15, 20 years ago. That wouldn't have been as widely available to the globe.
Yeah.
YouTube wasn't even out until 2006, 7, maybe 2005
Right.
at the end, but, like, popular 2008, 9.
Yeah.
So information being able to travel so fast allows, and across, like this is talking about, like, you know, we're talking about manifestation and frequencies. Like, literally you can pull a conversation out of the air
Yeah.
into your phone. Like,
Yeah.
that's the power of where we are today. But that power can also be used incorrectly or ignorantly, and that's where conspiracy theories come, or misinformation, or people think they're, you know, an expert in everything because they can look at their phone really quick and then look for something
Yes.
on a forum or a blog, or this, you know, Harvard said coconut oil is going to kill you or cause cancer. It's
Right.
like, what?
Yes.
No, like, things like that.
Oh.
So that's where I think the power can go either way, but it's our job to not just be so quick to agree with everything because it's on the internet. And I think that so many people don't know how to think for themselves. And so when people use the word sheep, I think that's super disrespectful, but also
Yeah.
like, I get what they're saying, but I also think that that's something shit they gotta look at themselves of why they're saying that they're gonna call people sheep, because whatever, I'm not going to go into that part, but at the same time, that is like kind of the culture we live in today, where everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people don't know how to think for themselves. Maybe it's fear-based, or maybe they just get overwhelmed.
But it might not even be, in most cases, they don't know how to think for themselves. They don't know how to explore research properly, because you
That's-
can have,
that's a huge
like,
thing.
Yeah, you can have published research.
Not even
but
research,
it's
just an
not-
article.
Yeah,
The
published
headline says
articles.
this. Well, how do they come up with that? No one
Yeah.
or not no one, but a lot of people, including myself, before I was challenged to that, don't think, like, I wonder how they just, again, act emotionally to what
Right.
what information, what
I mean,
sensory
they even
input they're
proved,
using.
there was a group of people a few years ago that were proving how easy it is to get published now. So it just being like a published article is not any reason that it could be factual. Like, they were publishing false claims. They were getting things that they were like, yeah, we did this research and we found out that, like,
Oh, God.
80% of people that eat meat die one day,
I got a
or
great
something like
example of
that.
that.
Yeah. And it's just like, and they were getting it published, and it's like, just because it's published doesn't mean that it's right or true.
Yeah.
And the way you have to look at research, which is like, thankfully, I learned how to do it in school. Like, getting my master's degree, they teach you how to dissect research and explore it, and, like, look who funded it, look what kind of study they did,
Right.
look at their control population, look at the population they use, like,
What kind of biases?
yeah, exactly. And there's always something. So to take, like, one article or one image and, like, base an entire opinion around that, that's where it's really harmful. And that's what Facebook is now. That's all it is. One article,
It's not all
one
it is,
picture.
I get what you're saying, but
and-
there are people that are credible that, like, put out unbiased
Like
things,
Josh Berry.
Yeah, like Josh Berry.
or like that put out, like, looked into things. But in Eat Fat Get Thin by Dr. Mark Hyman, I believe
But you
there's
can't
a section
post an
in there
entire book
where he
on
talks about
Facebook.
how to dissect studies to look
Yeah.
at who funded it, how do they do it, like you said. Because I've had so many friends that have been like, look at this study about veganism and how it's so
Oh,
much better,
oh.
and then I'm like, okay, let me look at it. And then I'm like, oh, they're comparing it to people that are stressed, eat processed food, drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, or obese, diabetes. Yeah, they started eating plants and got better. But did you look at this or that? And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But yeah, that's super important. And that's when I went through my health coaching certification program, 6-7 years ago. They started the opening talk with, we're grateful to have you here. Welcome, blah, blah. One of the first things they made a point about was, we're not here to teach you what to think. We're here to teach you how to think. Yeah. So we're going to throw veganism, whole grains, paleo, carnivore, keto, or carnivore wasn't even a thing back then, but or at least well known, but all these things that are conflict so you can understand how to think for yourself and what you feel is best based on the research and pick a path to go look at more, all these paths. And I think being challenged with that, especially nutrition and health and getting the psychological piece, helped me. And that's something that I saw my old self was like, I'm not looking at anything and that's why we call this a Great Matters podcast. We're looking at the context. Everything's not so Harvard said coconut oil is going to give you cancer or heart disease, whatever it was. It's not how did they come up with that? Or even at Metabolic Health Summit, talking about how statins do X amount of percent better for you when that number was so off. It was 35 to 55, but they actually traced back a heart or what's the doctor say? That heart specialist, what are they called? Cardiologist was breaking that down, and he's like, it's actually 0.1% effective in all these things, but they trace it to this, they do that, they add this, and then by the time they get to this number, it's factual to what they're talking about, but the fine print is what you don't see and what it says that.
Dude, my favorite example of this that I see on a weekly, if not daily basis is the damn Game Changers documentary and What the Health, this vegan propaganda that's marketed very well, got famous people in it, and if Arnold Schwarzenegger's in there, and I have to, I'm not, you guys know me, I'm not an arguer. We're lucky enough to know that information and to hear that and kind of roll our eyes, and we're connected to lots of influencers, if you will, and doctors that are willing to go on and give a rebuttal. But what about the people that think that that's healthy, and the next thing you know, they're eating Beyond Meat burgers, and they're doing the best that they can? I mean, I was a vegan at one point because I thought that's the best, that's clean, right? It makes sense. Plants are good, right? We want our veggies. But then you're eating this burger that's full of glyphosate and
it's just processed vegan food.
And it just I have a lady right now who's a bodybuilder, and she's reaching out and wants some help, and I'm trying to connect her with a good coach because that's just not my world. But I'm like, what's your diet like? You feeling to shred out? What's your diet like? Well, I eat plants. I'm like, where are you getting your protein from? And she's like, protein is protein. Protein is not protein. Vegetables are good. I don't know. The more I think about that, I'm kind of
there's a difference, and
there
to
are
not go
bodybuilders.
Yeah,
which I find
but they're supplementing out their ass.
Do you think some people can actually can thrive on that?
I don't know. I would be so interested to talk to somebody that does
Rich
it.
Roll. Rich Roll is a great example of that. This guy Wade Lanehart, I think, who does BioOptimizers. I don't know if you guys know that company, but he's all about it too. He was a bodybuilder, very successful. Is all about the plant. I think if you do that, you've got to be so dialed in, and it's got to have to do with your genetics. I mean, I use a vegan approach for detox. I like the idea of...
But that's not long term. No, and we're talking about muscle development, and this could be its own episode.
I'm talking about autophagy.
You're talking about the amino acid leucine that is signaling muscle protein synthesis, and in order to get that 3 grams that's necessary in an average adult human being to signal that process, you have to get 40 to 60 grams of a variety of plant matter protein to signal that. But then also when these people are like, oh, I'm vegan and I'm a CrossFit athlete or I'm a bodybuilder, it's like, yeah, but what did you do to develop that muscle at the beginning?
I want to know.
Even if you get those amounts of protein from quinoa, I listened to this really good podcast. I posted it in my group. Dave Asprey's talking about there's actually something in the plants that you don't absorb that amount of protein either.
That's what Ali Miller talks about that. Yeah. The nutrients too, they're not bioavailable.
It's almost like it's anti-nutrients or
It's
something.
like synthetic ketones with the L form of BHB versus the R form, which is the bioactive form. Yeah. It's not going to be utilized the same way.
Right.
I just want to know, in the light of all this cancel culture, wasn't there a video of Arnold Schwarzenegger after he was in
Yes.
that movie, like making a steak. He was like, "Oh, this is my favorite. Like, this is
Favorite
what I
food.
do."
What's your
And
favorite food?
his favorite
A
food-
steak.
Yeah, a steak. And he was cooking and eating a steak, and I was like, "How was he in that documentary?" And
But
then,
then
like,
He even
eating a
said it in the
steak.
documentary, I think.
Really?
Yeah, he said something in the documentary. He's obviously boys with who's the director? Cameron.
I don't know.
I don't
Famous
yeah.
director, old Arnie probably owes him a couple of favors and just was taken out of context whenever they videoed him.
But even the athletes they use, like Serena Williams, I think was in there. Cam Newton was in there, or some.
Yeah, Cam Newton is
But then
not
you-
playing for the Panthers anymore because he could never heal because he was eating vegetables.
But then that's the thing, like. That's like where some
Why you
people,
hurt, bro?
some
'Cause you
people
eat vegetables
that
all the
were pointing that part out of the athletes that they chose were like they did it for an X amount of time, like a period of time in their professional career, and then either got sick or injured.
Yeah, that's what he happened to him.
But now
couldn't-
Cam Newton's on the Patriots now.
Yeah, and he ain't going nowhere. I mean, unless he starts eating meat. I mean, looking
I
at
think
the way
he
he's
is.
dressing
I think
and
he
what
is
he's
now.
eating, I'm like, what's this guy doing, man? This guy ever hit his head too many times.
But that's the thing, like even documentaries that are in my favor, of my opinion, I don't like people to watch
You
because
don't see them because
because-
they're not out there, man. They're not game
well,
changers.
that's one, but there's also the Magic Pill. It's a pro keto documentary, and it's, I mean,
Brushed over.
you can look it over. I mean, it's pretty popular, but like I don't like documentaries about certain topics that are so opinion based now that have science and research to back it because they're trying to feed a point. So they're cherry picking, just like the 7 country study that Ansel Keys used to prove that high fat intake causes heart disease, which there was no, he picked 7 out of 20 countries that proved it. All the other ones disproved it, but we didn't look at that.
Yeah.
That's the thing with documentaries that are not story based
Yeah.
or things like that.
What about the
It's-
China study?
It's like, yeah, they look at these things, they cherry pick, and then they feed you information that fits their hypothesis when science is actually just curiosity. What happens when this? Not, let's find all the reasons to help our hypothesis or our
Yes.
thing first. Like, that's not how science
That's how
works.
science should not be. I'm going to go and I'm going to find a way to prove my point. I'm going to go run some experiments and see what is
But you
actually
run the
true.
experiments in favor of what you want. Like you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a pre.
This is how we
Your
can make it
hypothesis.
fit.
like a pre-curated opinion or
Yeah, it's called a hypothesis.
yeah, but like no, like you have an
Hypotenuse?
outcome. You have a desired outcome,
Yeah.
and then you find things that are going to prove. Like if you're like, I want to create fire, but I know this does that, but I want to prove that X, Y, and Z could create fire. So you exclude anything that's fire retardant, like water or depriving oxygen, like all these things, because you're like, look at that creates fire. If you put 2 pieces of paper together, but it excludes all these other things.
And
I don't know if that was a
studies-
great
Sure.
example,
The
but
studies they run are bullshit too. I mean, like you said, they're cherry picking the data. Like the China study, that's one that Dave was talking about today. He said that's one of the reasons that he chose to be a raw vegan years ago. Now his Hashimoto's is flaring up, and I got all kinds of autoimmune, and his skin's messing up. What they did is they went in, and I guess the people that were eating meat, they were in areas of the country that were highly polluted and lots of toxins in their food, and so that's just like. I mean, I guess you can make anything fit at this
yeah.
point.
Well, we got a little sidetracked. This is definitely something we're passionate about that we should talk about again later. But the cancel culture, seeing it go the other way, not diving in, just reacting to a headline, the Chris D'Elia thing.
What was that?
He apparently there was this scandal with him talking to underage women, and people freaked out that he's a pedophile and all this and that. And people were like,
What kind of
friends of ours were like, fuck this dude, we're not
Yeah.
listening to him anymore. And then when you get to
I
the other
even
point of
had-
the story, like his side, people are like, or he's saying like, and other people like all the evidence is like, oh, Chris was talking to this girl, he likes younger girls, and they found out that she was underage and he stopped talking to her altogether. And then there was a story where 3 years later, when she was 21 or something, or 20, she reached back out and he didn't respond. And so like that was the other part of the evidence people weren't either they didn't know about or they weren't looking at. They just were like, fuck him because
So
he
there
talks
were-
to young girls.
There were all these like Twitter stories from girls like in cities that he was touring in and visiting, and they were like, they never said things like, I told him I was this age. They were saying things like, I was clearly underage.
Yes.
There were
My
photos
God.
of me.
You can't tell that these days.
There were photos of me at high school football games and for homecoming week and all this stuff. And like, clearly I was underage and he had no regard for it and this and that. And it's like I just like I've known guys that are skeevy and they like younger girls and they go after younger girls hard, but it doesn't mean that they want to date a 16-year-old or they want to hook up with a 16-year-old. And I think that was kind of like, he was creepy. Like, some of the stuff he was saying to these girls was creepy, but like, I don't know if it was predatory or like.
But it also showed when he found out their actual age,
Yeah.
he just cut everything off.
Right. It's not like he ever exchanged photos with them. It was just like words and we should hang out and you should come and see me. And then when it was obvious, like, so people were like posting screenshots on Twitter, and then he came back and posted his own screenshots. But he hasn't posted anything on his Instagram since like June 8th. He is like completely laying low. He's not doing. I had somebody on Instagram go to his page, like somehow they were able to pull up all the people that still followed Chris D'Elia, like that were in their friends group, screenshot all the people, like lists of people. I was on that list, and post it to their stories and be like, if you still follow him, you need to change this.
Wow.
And they were like, I just unfollowed him 5 minutes ago, so no big deal, but you should go unfollow this person.
So it's almost like they're shaming other people.
Yeah. But I was like, we don't, like, my first reaction is definitely to believe women. And I stepped back and I was like super disappointed and I was like, this sucks. But like, you know, more evidence needs to come out about this. Like, I was ready to hear his side of the story. If he just flat out was like, that's not true, fuck that, this and like, he did it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
R.
if
Kelly?
there's, yeah, exactly. Like, but I think the situation is deeper and more complex than that. And I think we are doing a discredit to people by not letting them. Somebody can't be guilty until proven innocent. And that goes across the board. You can't do it to black people you pull over in their car because you're racially profiling them. And you can't do it to pit bulls when you think that they're all nasty. And
Great
you can't
example.
do it to people that are accused of something just because you think it's a terrible thing. Like, you have to pause and do it, because that's literally how people were lynched. That's why witches were burned. And like, not very long ago, that's why black men were lynched in the street because white women accused them of doing things.
Yeah.
Like, it's harmful, and it's like, this is on a completely different level because nobody's getting murdered. But in my eyes, I'm like, you can't bring out pitchforks and...
Yeah.
But everybody's on a witch hunt right now. Everybody,
Yeah.
that's all they want to do.
Especially through the fucking COVID pandemic, people are all...
Well, in the
People are
beginning,
on
what was
stress.
different is, and I remember this specifically, is we had all this bitching and complaining and jumping on this and this fire here and that fire there, and then all of a sudden we all kind of came together. You know,
Yeah.
Brian was kind of talking about that one night. We're all in this together. You know, we're gonna figure this out. And then you didn't hear the bitching. And now that we've been locked in our homes for 2 or 3 months, 4 months, I don't even know how
I'd
long
say it's
been
3.5 now.
Now
Almost 4,
it's starting
actually.
to fire back up. You know,
March.
if you're not
Yeah,
wearing
4
a
months.
mask, fuck you. If you're wearing a mask, fuck you. And it's like, are you a person that wears a mask or not? Are you a person that believes in COVID or not? Like, why do we have to draw these goddamn lines in the sand? Like, why can't you just love somebody, love your fellow man? And that's where, goddamn, psychedelics comes in. 'Cause you can see that. Like, I feel connected to everyone and everything. And it's hard for me. Believe me, I was a redneck. I was in a small-minded town. I mean, I had probably some racist views, but now I've put in the hard work. I've opened my mind to different things, and I can see that that's stupid now. But I just hate seeing somebody drawing a line in the sand and saying, if you're not this, then you're that, and if you're that, you're against me. And I'm like, no, we can disagree. We can have different opinions. We can come together and have a really good conversation, and one of us might change our mind, but we can still be friends if we don't agree with the same sides.
And you're not gonna change anyone's mind by like shaming them
Yeah.
or berating them with
That's
your own
that
thoughts and
ego-driven
opinions.
shit, though. People
It's-
don't know enough about themselves,
Yeah.
so they're just reacting. And if you don't agree with me, that means we can't connect. But then also, that goes the opposite way. And Dr. Joe talks about this when you like form relationships, and it's just based on like experiences that you've had or like places you've gone, and it's just like, oh, I've been there. Oh,
Yeah.
you know so and so. You
Yeah.
can create this connection with them, and it's so superficial, it's so surface level that when you start to learn about yourself or learn about the other person deeper, then you're like, that's when people get into relationships and then they get divorced, or they get into a relationship too quick, or you know, maybe they're not married and they have all these issues, and it's because you're not willing to look at yourself. You have this veil or this lens you've been looking at the world through that's been passed down to you from other people in your life.
refuse to change it at all.
And that's where you can't
refuse to
accept
adjust
anything that
yourself.
doesn't
You guys, we were
line.
talking about this the other night. I think it's a great example of this. It's like called Hot Island or whatever. Do you remember what it's called, Jackie?
Okay, yeah. Katie was telling me Fantasy Island.
So Fantasy
Yeah.
Island. Okay, so I love the premise or the background here. So it's basically these really hot men and women that go to this island and they're thinking they're gonna hook up.
I think it's
But
gonna
they-
be like the real world.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah.
they're like, dude, they're already hooking up day one. So 24 hours, they let them kind of mingle, and they're on fire. They're like ready to rock. But then 24 hours in, they find out that the way you win this money is you do not have sex, and so they're freaking out. But what happens is the people that hooked up immediately and they're like pairing up. Well, they get to know each other a little bit, and they can't have sex with each other, so they have nothing in common. So it's like going out in college, and thank God they didn't have cell phones back then. And you're fucked up. You got another girl's fucked up. You guys are kind of the life of the party. You go home, you have sex, and like you're on this thing where you just kind of see each other every night. You party and hang out, but you don't ever know this person.
Right.
And that's like that's the way I think that younger kids. I mean, with like I never, thank God, was around for like the swiping left stuff.
Oh, Tinder
And all that
Hinge
stuff,
and
like, dude, that would have been bad news
Bumble.
bears. I mean, but think about that. As a man in like college, it's almost, for some people, it's almost like a notch in the belt kind of thing. It's like you have no connection with this person, but you just want to go and get laid so that you can go and brag to your boys.
I had friends that literally kept tracking numbers, and that's what their thing was like, I'm at this 100 and something, and I'm just like,
Dude, I've got some friends with some big numbers. Yeah.
and I was like, all right, yeah, but like definitely didn't care about anything other than getting that number.
Yeah,
I
and
think
it was
your
more to
penis
brag
should
to your
fall
boys.
off when you hit triple digits. I think that should be like a rule. Like it should
Start
just
counting
fall
again,
off.
man.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it just restart. You have to grow a new one. Give yourself
Yeah,
some
you have to
time
go get a
like,
shot of penicillin.
You have to
and-
regenerate.
Something about the Chris
Gosh.
D'Elia thing that I wrote, or D'Elia is I just wrote down because I didn't want to forget this. It was Andrew Scholes, the comedian that's been on Rogan a bunch and is friends with Chris, and like he did this thing where he was saying, you know, he was talking about it, and it was a week after the news, and then some new information came out, and he was like, look at this side that people didn't know or just dismiss, and he said something that makes sense to the society we're in, to the context of this conversation. It's so proven guilty until proven innocent now, when it should be the other way
you're
around.
guilty.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, my belief around why Chris D'Elia is having this whole thing so massive rather than other people that are doing the same, if not worse, or are doing worse things, because he's so famous. Like, he's so well known, and that's what people are so focused on, other people that aren't themselves or directly affected by them, because so-and-so's on TV and like they just dive into that person's life,
Yeah.
which creates a whole nother whirlwind of problems for their own being if they can't disconnect from what they're watching, comparing themselves unconsciously. But I think that's why it's gotten so big or so bad with certain people being exposed, because they have such a figure to the masses, and if they step out of line one little bit, it's like, oh, you're fucking guilty until we know why you're not.
I
And
think,
then
I
also,
think
you know,
the Me Too movement really did open up Pandora's box.
Sure, yeah.
You know, and
I don't really know what that's about. Like, I've heard and I've started to put things together, but I never really understood, like I never really heard about it until recently, or what that was.
So the Me Too movement was a movement started on social media, and it became a really popular hashtag where women were coming forward and talking about harassment that they had undergone throughout their lives and their career, and then they would end it with the hashtag Me Too. And it gives me chills to think about, because what is the statistic? Like 1 in 4 women will be a victim of some kind of like sexual violence in their life.
Never heard that. Wow.
Yeah. It's a staggering statistic. And if you ask, like, just ask the women in your life, when was the first time they felt sexualized? Like, how old were they the first time that they felt sexualized? I was 11 the first time I got catcalled on the street. 11 years old.
Like, what is that like, catcall?
Oh, that's like when I was
hey,
like walking by and construction workers like
oh my God.
yelled something at me when I was 11 years old. I didn't even like boys when I was 11 years old.
Damn.
I still thought they were gross. And women hear it at like 8 years old, 6 years old, 11 years old. There are whole posts of like women in the comments, and then women that have actually been victims of abuse. Oh, I was first sexualized when my uncle pulled me to the side and told me to touch his penis at Thanksgiving, and I was 3 years old. Like, it's staggering. It's wild. And it's like 1 in 4 women. That's just, it is what it is. And I think the Me Too movement was powerful. I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes, and it put a lot of people in jail that should be in jail. Harvey Weinstein, that famous Hollywood, oh my God. So many women that he made do crazy things.
Epstein.
Oh, Jeffrey Epstein's.
And that's sexual trafficking.
Yeah, child trafficking.
Whoa, one of my buddies that
pedophilia.
play golf with is like deep into that and the stuff that he talks about. It's like this sex ring that's connected all over the world and has like connections to people in really high places that are really well known, and they're having sex with young boys and girls. Like, that is insane.
There's a whole. Yeah.
What is that?
That's
like,
a whole other thing.
You got to be super fucked up to be attracted to, minors.
Yeah, but then you think about the more emotional work we've been doing. You think about what happened to them when they were young.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah. But I mean, or even like Bill Cosby, like someone like that.
What happened with that?
He was.
I hear people make jokes about that all the time.
He's slipping him a mick.
Yeah. So he would invite women to his home, and they would be like, oh my gosh, Bill Cosby, he's like everybody's favorite dad, like he's just this iconic thing. Did the Cosby Show, did kids say the darndest things, but it's just, I think that paints a picture. Like he works with all these children, and then like girls, I'm pretty sure both underage and overage, but if they were underage, I think they were like I don't think they were like 8. I think they were like 17, 18, things like that.
Oh my God.
Would come over to their house, and then the next thing they know, he would be like ushering them outside, or they'd be like waking up and their clothes would be disheveled, and he would just be like, oh, you just fell asleep, and then send them home. So he would slip them something and then rape them or fondle them, and then like, so just...
My man's in prison now.
Yeah, like that's
crazy.
So I think that after hearing about that women, especially those who have been involved in some kind of harassment or abuse, it makes sense to me that a first knee-jerk reaction is to go, fuck that dude, whenever they hear of any kind of predatory behavior from a man. Fuck that dude.
Yeah, and then hopefully it encouraged some other asshole to at least keep their mouth shut or act better, more appropriate.
But I also see that going horribly the other way and being abused, because I remember being in high school and there was a story, I don't know if it was factual, I never looked into it, I was 16 or something, but it always freaked me out, was the high school over, there was this couple that had been together since middle school, they were in high school, family knew, like it was all good, like it was just a middle school story where they got into high school still dating, and then he turned over 18, and then she filed rape against him, and then the story goes she won the case claiming he raped her.
And what was the age difference?
It was like 18 and 17. It was something like that. It was like a middle school relationship that had just been going, and the families knew about it. And this was the story again, but it paints a picture of like how sensitive this is and how it could go either way. And then it was like, oh, all of a sudden now it wasn't acceptable, and then like they like filed a lawsuit or whatever it was. That was the story. But then also I remember being in Greenville, and one of the older riders I looked up to and was friends with, I don't know the whole thing. I wasn't there, but apparently he was talking to this chick for a while, and then one night, or the next day, she said he raped her, and that was the thing he was battling. And they were known to be hanging out, going downtown together, like getting fucked up, like, and it just like I wonder, like, with perception creating so many people's realities, but then also like the fear, and then people being shitty either way, or not really shitty, but just being messed up, whatever, like. I feel like abusing that, like, oh, he fucking attacked me, and like how many guys go through the punishment for something they didn't do. I mean, we see that with race too. I mean, the whole thing with those 5 young black men that were accused of something, went to jail.
The Central Park 5, yeah.
Yeah, and then like years later got released, and they're like, oh, our bad, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was what was going on too. I think the negative things, like, I think a lot of things, positive things came out of it. One of the negative things is like, hey, 30 years ago in college, this senator, I don't know, raped me. And it's like, how do you even know that happened? How do you remember that? And what were the circumstances? Are we just going to jump on and barbecue this guy? Or are we going to have a conversation with both of them and figure out?
That's a lot of consequence of that person's life.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not saying like
either
this guy
way,
deserves.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, to that guy,
but like
30 years later, then it's like, all right, 30 years, I get being suppressed, I get being in fear, but then it's like, oh shit, like, you can't just go off your word.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I remember a situation that was terrible in college where I had a fraternity brother, a good girlfriend of mine. They hooked up one night, and the next morning she was so drunk that she doesn't remember it, and she woke up and said like, he raped me. So I went in there and beat the shit out of him, and then sat down with him eventually, and he's like, dude, and I saw it, she was all over him that night. She went home with it. I remember she was like, I'm going home with so and so, and I'm like, okay, cool, like, have a good time, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Not saying he had the best intentions, or maybe she was too sloppy, but she was blacked out enough that she didn't remember anything, and it was like, I didn't know whose side to be on. I just went and punched my friend in the face because she told me that, but I was there the night before, and I saw some pretty risky behavior.
Yeah.
Not that it's right one way or the other, but like, how do you distinguish between who's right and who's wrong there?
I think that's where like consent is so important.
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest teaching moment for people, is teaching like your sons and your children to like ask for consent.
Yeah.
And teaching men and women that if you're blackout drunk, you still have to be accountable for your actions.
Yeah.
Like, men can't say, oh, I was so blackout drunk, I had no idea what I was doing. Don't get like that.
Yeah.
If you're rapey because you drink too much, like, that's fucked up. Like, you can't, and then who's to blame you?
It's both
this
ways.
and that.
I've hung out and hooked up with some girls in the past that were like way more forward than I was even comfortable with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I was like, whoa, like, all right, I can see how this goes either way, because definitely.
Yeah.
Well, you got to be able to control what's in your pants enough. Like, if a girl is like sloppy and drunk, she shouldn't be like that either.
I mean, I'm not
But
saying
if
I
she's
wasn't sloppy,
blacked out,
well.
yeah, it's like you got to be able to like pump the brakes. And there are so many scary situations now, and I watched this really powerful conversation between two people, and it was like 5 years later, and this woman like went around thinking that she was raped for 5 years, and the guy had no idea. He was like, I thought you wanted it. Like, I started kissing you and initiating things, and you just let it happen. And she's like, but I never said yes or okay. She was like, I was just a female and kind of drunk and alone, and I was scared that you would hurt me if I said no. And it's like, that's a whole other psychological thing. So she had this like complete unwillingness to have this encounter with this guy, but he has no idea.
No.
So there's really weird layers to it. There really is.
To tie all this back into cancel culture, I never got an answer to Goya beans. Like, why are people hating on Goya beans, trying to cancel them now, just because Trump advocated for them?
Well, just no, because they advocated for Trump.
Yeah, I think that's shitty.
The current administration is very interesting, because they are making a lot of moves to harm people, and especially like like marginalized groups, LGBTQ groups, minority groups, I can see why they would be pissed that, especially Goya representing that culture and that
Right,
identity.
he's trying to build a wall to keep them out, kind of thing.
I mean, not even that, not even just immigrants. Like, it's the policies that they're implementing and creating are affecting communities of color a little bit disproportionately.
Sure.
And communities of, like, the law they just passed about how healthcare providers can essentially deny transgendered people healthcare. They don't have to have a reason for it. They can just say no. So, like, a new policy.
And he got a lot of the Hispanic and African American vote, didn't he?
Right. So I think that people being like, yeah, I'm not going to support Goya anymore if they're going to, like, fund this administration or if they're going to, like, completely support this administration. I get that. But what I don't get is someone just being like, I'm Republican, and you just being like, I'm never going to support you ever again. Because I think there's a really big difference between Donald Trump and a normal Republican person.
I also just hate how you're classified in America between left and right, Democrat and Republican.
It's daunting.
And if you say you're one of them and the other person isn't, it goes back to the whole emotional reaction thing. Like, oh, I can't talk to you then. Like,
Well,
I can't be
it's so
friends with you.
It's just like trying to
can't-
talk to a vegan online. You always have to go in and be like, I'm not trying to offend you. I just want to know why. And that's like, how dare would you ask? I'm like, because if you're for the animals, I get it. But if you think you're doing something that's good for your health, like, we need to have a deeper conversation.
Right. And it's, like, ingrained in people's head that just because somebody, like, I would consider myself liberal, like, say, Mitch, you were raised Republican and you probably have a lot of Republican beliefs, but it doesn't mean we don't agree on some things.
Right.
That's the thing. Like,
pretty
you're not
damn
just
liberal.
just
Yeah,
because.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you were, but, like, there was, somebody posted this table, and it took all my strength in me not to be like, this is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life, like, on Facebook. And it was, like, a left column, and it was, like, blue, and it was, like, if you support the left, you believe in murdering babies. And then on the
those
right, it
things are
was,
so
like,
stupid.
pro-life, and then it was gun control, and then it was, like, gun rights, and then what was another one? Open borders, like, like everyone on the left wants open
Masks.
borders, and then it's like, so it's just so infuriating to me because I was like, I don't want any open, and it was like violence and rioting, and then the right wants law and order, and it's just
Joe Biden doesn't want a police force.
it's
Oh my
just
God,
the
dude!
most
I can't stand this. You're this or you're that.
like
stuff.
quit
I mean,
picking sides like that. Like, I'm a liberal person. I own guns.
how dare you? You're kicked out of the club.
Right? Yeah, I don't deserve it. Like, take
Yeah.
my voter registration card. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it's wild to me.
I'm never going to go one way or the other. I could never say, oh, I'm conservative or I'm liberal. I mean, if you had to put a gun to my head, I would probably say, like, socially, I'm very liberal.
Right.
As long as you're not hurting someone, like, go for it. But it also, like, more fiscally, I could probably lean more to the conservative side.
Right.
You know, but does that mean that I like one or the other? Or, I mean, I can get along with anybody. I've been so many people in my life, and I think that's what's so cool about life is that we can change and we can be different and we can have
That's what
friendships with different
frustrates
people
us
and-
about getting into politics is because when you get into politics, you have to pick a side, and then you have to pick
Yeah.
what that side means about everything in your life. And then you got people now that are changing their beliefs on life and who they talk to and how they live. And
I don't think you
what
should
they
be
do.
able to campaign as Democrat or Republican.
Oh,
I
gosh.
think you should just be able to say what you believe in, and nobody should be able to label you one way or the other, and you just go based on that. That's what we should cancel. Two-party system.
Boom.
Winner take all voting.
Done.
And what else should be canceled?
Bitching and moaning.
There it is.
Being offended before looking into something
Yeah,
and still being
pause.
offended and making it about yourself.
If you read a statement and you find yourself immediately offended, do yourself a favor
Look in the mirror.
and just pause. Yeah, just pause for a
It's
second.
usually your projection. That's what I find with me.
Is
Is
it?
when I have a quick reaction to something and I'm like, "Bleh," I'm triggered and I want to, like, jump down that person's throat. I'm like, that's something from my personal life that I need to work on.
Yeah.
So just pause and then ask yourself why.
Unless it's like a
Yeah,
direct.
that's one thing I like. Josh taught me. He's always like, "Why?"
Yeah.
It's aggravating as shit sometimes.
But, like,
it gets to the root cause of what.
I would
where
say
it's coming
just
from.
that one question, if everyone listening and everyone in the world could just ask themselves why they're doing what they're doing, or thinking what they're thinking, or feeling what they're feeling, we would have a drastically different population and
Amen.
society in America, at least.
And that doesn't mean you shouldn't like disagree with, like, if somebody very blatantly, like tomorrow, if Trump tweeted, "I hate gays," like for sure would not fuck with him.
What
But
an
I'm not
asshole.
going to be like angry. Like I'm not surprised.
Well, the
Like,
point of
oh my
asking
God,
yourself
you know?
why and looking at yourself as the cause of
Well, I think the
everything in
offended
your reality
part
is
is
not to
the-
just disclude feeling. That's a human being, but it's to not rationally feel something, or rationally react, or rationally say or do something. Like it's to do something once you've thought about it. Like,
You mean irrationally?
or irrationally? Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, irrationally.
I mean, our attention
like to
spans are so
rationally think
short.
about
We
things.
we see something, we react to it. We don't have time to go and do the research and understand that, oh, this is a left point of view or a right point of view. And really, if you went to their side, they've got point of views too. And it's
Right.
might find that you fall somewhere in the middle.
Some common ground.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
We should cancel culture.
Amen.
Cancel being offended. Cancel groups, as Bill Burr was talking
Cancel
about.
knee-jerk reactions.
No.
Do your homework. Quit being a little bitch.
Yeah, quit bitching.